me, Kat Cuppet, and our awesome storytellers here wherever we are in real space and here in virtual space with you. We are delighted to be here. This is our second virtual live storytelling show and our second live storytelling show. Is that true? Or our third, Michael, live storytelling show? Our
third live storytelling show, second virtual.
Second virtual. And
Yeah.
all three of them have been amazing and delightful and human. You know, it feels to me like there's something really serendipitous about launching this particular show at this particular moment in history, because I feel like we're all, well, I'll speak for myself. I feel like I've been really confronted with both continue to be exploring my sort of individual humanity, but also the collective humanity, and to have a moment where we're all sort of in the same moment, so together. It's great to have a show where we get to share our stories. You know, I think about why I was drawn to doing first this podcast with the theme of sharing stories about daring to be human, which to me means just sharing our vulnerabilities and the ways in which we risk to stretch ourselves and expand our range as human beings, and connect with others. And then now to enter into this huge art form, which is global and expanded so much, even just in the last decade, of sharing personal, true stories. And I realized that it's always what I've been attracted to. So I have personally a background as an actor and then as an improviser, and both of those things are fine and good, and I like them, and I've spent my life doing them. But really at the heart of all of those things, what I was seeking is something that's much more actually in this art form, which is telling true stories or sharing authentically, just as a human being, ourselves. And the script part, the character part, the being someone else part was actually not the part that was ever attractive to me, or the most attractive or the most interesting part. It was being part of a community where being vulnerable and sharing emotion and even sharing the not always pretty or perfect parts of ourselves was valued and embraced and supported and, well, if nothing else, accepted. And you know, I remember there was a very early memory I have of, I was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7, and I went up to a neighbor's house. We lived in a giant apartment building in New York City, and I went up to a neighbor's house, a friend, a little girlfriend's, and they were talking about they were going to go out to dinner or something, and I started to yawn. And as I started to yawn, I thought to myself, oh no, if I yawn, my eyes are going to start to water. And if my eyes water, they're going to think I'm crying. So I better hide my face so that they don't see tears in my eyes and think I'm crying, because I don't want them to think I'm upset. So I buried my head in this hassock in front of this chair that they had there, so they wouldn't see my face and think I was crying. But then, of course, because they saw me like lying down, burying my face in this hassock, they thought I was upset and crying, which they probably wouldn't have thought if they just saw me yawning. And they were like, "Oh no, don't worry. If we go out to dinner, we're going to take you with us. We would never just abandon you here." And it became a whole thing. And I think the reason that tiny little moment has stuck with me was because I realized what kind of crazy machinations were going on in my head, that I thought I had to hide a yawn, that I was so concerned about someone seeing emotion that I was doing these backflips to hide an emotion I wasn't even having. And I think I've really spent my whole life seeking spaces and communities where emotion was valued and uh, made safe to express rather than derided or told to be shut down. One of the things that I love about this moment in the world is that I think we're treating each other more gently, and we're recognizing that people feel things and that that's legitimate, and holding space for each other in new ways. That's always been the way that I think the arts have been for people, and certainly the storytelling communities have been. So I invite you all to hold that space for our storytellers tonight. We have a variety of stories, and we're certainly going to hold that space for each other as we're here. We will be the audience that we all can see for each other, but we know the rest of you are out there and will be holding that space for us as well. So hi, everyone. How you doing? Hi. Our first storyteller tonight, officially, is a guy named Michael Burns. He is the artistic director of the Mopco Improv Theater, where he is coming from, broadcasting from. Right now, we try to every now and then keep some life in it, although we are not officially broadcasting shows with audiences there for a while. He also happens to be my beloved husband and the producer of tonight's show, doing double duty. Take it away, Mr. Burns.
Oh, thank you. Hi. My story takes place right here. I'm in this room, the theater. It's the end of the last pre-COVID-19 winter. In other words, just a few months ago. I'm here in the theater, and I am loaded for bear to teach a class, the final of 6 scene study classes, improvisational scene fundamentals. This is the culmination of 4 6-week classes plus a 4-week essentials class. So these students have had like 52 hours of training, and they're going to do a student showcase for the Mop and Bucket Company and for their invited guests. And I have checked my notes, and I have put a plan together for this class because, frankly, I've been working really hard and I'm a little burnt out. It's not true, I'm a lot burnt out. But here's the thing. It's been 3.5 years since we opened up the Mopco, and in that time, I know for a fact that my chops as an improv teacher have grown so much. In fact, I impress myself more and more all the time. I see people come in here and they start to study improv, and I see their lives change in wonderful ways, and I see them gain all these skills, and I think, Burns, you are hot stuff. You're on fire. If I was going to recommend some of the best improv teachers in the country, you would be right up there on the list. I'm thinking to myself, never saying it out loud, of course, because that would be egotistical. But it's what I'm carrying around on the inside. So anyway, I'm here with these students, and they come in, and time for the class to start. And I say, listen, let's skip the warm-up altogether. Let's just get to work, because you are going to be performing, and we got a lot to do. And they don't look as excited as I thought they would. They look actually sort of a little puzzled. But I press forward. I figure it's a little bit of nerves, right? And I say, okay, 2 up. Let's just start with some 2-person scenes. No fancy stuff whatsoever, just scenes from nothing. A scene from nothing means 2 improvisers get up on stage. They don't ask for a suggestion. They just look at each other and sort of find the reality they're in, and one of them comments on it, and the scene naturally unfolds from there. It sounds simple, but it takes some real improv chops to trust the moment that way and do that. Well, here's a line of students sitting in the chairs in the theater, just sort of like avoiding my eye contact and kind of shifting their weight around and looking at their shoes. And I'm thinking, what is going on with these people? What is happening here? Finally, 2 of them get up and they do a scene, and it's not a bad scene, but it's not a good scene. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, Mr. Hotshot teacher, what are you going to say here? Because I always want to say something positive, but I also want to get some feedback in there. And I managed to find something positive to say. I think what oozes out of me is a lot of the negative that I had in mind. They sit down, two others get up and struggle through a scene, and it's kind of okay, but really not great. And there are some basic things that improvisers should know, that they're traps that they're falling into. And I'm thinking, what is going on? These guys know better than this. I even say it. I say, you guys know this stuff. Make your partner look good. It's not about you. It's about your partner and the scene. Just relax and receive. Improv is about receiving. And I go to say something specific to one of the students, and I can't think of a name, which is not unusual. I remind them that I have this, it's really like a disability. It is, it's a disability. I can know somebody fairly well and not be able to place their name. Or I can see a face and say, I know I've seen that person, but I don't know when or where I met this person, but I know them. Then with some little, conversational triggers, it'll come flooding back to me. And in this case, I just can't think of their names. And I remind them that I'm bad at that. But I say, but you know how important it is. You guys have done this, how important it is to name things in the scene. Uh, the class stumbles forward. And I say, okay, I think it would be great if we did a forward reverse game for your showcase. Now, for those of you who are listening, a forward reverse game works like this. The scene goes forward the way it does in time until there's the dinging of a bell by somebody running the game, and then the scene goes in reverse. The actors say the sentences forward so you can understand them, but the order of the sentences of the dialogue is in reverse until that bell dings again, and then it goes forward. This is a pretty advanced game, and these students should be able to handle it, but they are failing miserably. I mean, miserably. So I stop this and I say, okay, let's just review. The build-up for this is to do reverse scenes. A reverse scene is like, for example, it starts with shattered glass on the floor. Well, why is there shattered glass on the floor? Because I dropped a vase. Why did I drop a vase? Because my hands were wet. Why were my hands wet? Because I just filled the vase with water and put the flowers in it. Where'd the flowers come from? My scene partner gave them to me. The scene goes backwards. It's all cause and effect, and it's great training. They have no idea how to do these scenes. I stopped that exercise. I'm starting to feel angry at the students. This is a trap for any teacher. When you're angry at your students for not learning the way you think they should, something is seriously wrong. But I hide that anger and I say, okay, look, let's just work on just simple scene work, starting scenes in the middle. You guys remember that? You remember starting in the middle. You don't have to do all the exposition and explain the beginning and say, hi, how are you? Just start right in the middle. And they do some scenes that are better. They're better. And I notice that the students are starting to kind of relax and they're laughing and they're complimenting each other. And I'm saying, yeah, they're getting it back now. They were nervous. They were nervous because of the showcase coming up, but it's better. And the scenes get better and the class ends. And I say, okay, I'll send you an email with details about your showcase. Thanks so much, blah, blah, blah. They're out the door. It's the next day when I check my calendar and I see Monday, 7 p.m., final class, fundamentals, scene work. I taught that yesterday. Oh God. To class number 1 of the Essentials 4-week Intro to Improv type class. The students I had yesterday had had 2 hours of training, and then I was throwing every advanced improv concept you could think of at them. I'm in the middle of drafting an email to them apologizing for this gigantic brain fart, for this amazing failure of mine, when a couple things occur to me. One is that they did pretty damn well. Despite some of the worst teaching you can possibly imagine, by the end of 2 hours, they were making their partner look good. They were listening to each other. They were accepting the offer of this weird class in the moment and doing difficult scenes with some grace. And they were encouraging each other and laughing at each other. And they were relaxing. And I was so impressed with them. And the other thing I realized was that was them. and improv, this art form of ours. But their teacher was not maybe quite the hot shit that he thought he was. And the third thing I realized was that I just needed a full night's sleep really, really badly. Thank you.
Yay. Yay. Thank you. Come on
Thank
in,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that very human story. Um, I know we have all made, you know, taught, showed up at the wrong place at the wrong time or turned in the wrong assignment or something like that.
You know, usually you figure it out within 10 minutes or so, but sustaining it for 2 hours I thought was a unique accomplishment, actually.
And they were there with you. You know, the improv reminds me of the principle of like make your partner look good, and they certainly did a good job of that for you, didn't they?
Amazing. Amazing.
So, you know, the two questions that are on my mind at this moment, you know, it sort of gets back to, you know, I started by saying, you know, in this moment, I feel like we're showing each other a lot of grace, as your students did in your story. I'm wondering if what you, what for you feels not different in this strange time we're in, or what isn't sucking for you. Maybe it's that you're getting a full night's sleep.
Well, a lot feels different. I have to be honest about that, and there's some real suckage. But one of the things that doesn't suck is that in many ways I'm sort of living my best life. I'm getting up and working out in the garden, and I'm baking bread, and I'm painting pictures, and I'm doing some work on keeping the company going, and I'm hanging out with you, and playing with the dogs, and doing all sorts of things, being human, as opposed to 7 days a week, get into the theater, do the task, do the task, do the task. There are less of those tasks for me, not for you, I might add. You're still working incredibly hard, but uh, it's not bad to sort of round out my activities. That's okay.
And I know you are still teaching. And
Oh yeah, uh, and I plan on seriously screwing up in other classes as soon as possible. So people should register.
excellent.
Yeah.
And I think we will invite your students that if they feel like what you're teaching is not aligned with what they think the class they signed up for is, they have permission to tell you that in the future.
Well, this was also an experiment, Kat, in people just being sort of cowed by a new situation. I repeatedly said your showcase, the performance, getting ready, and they just sat there and nobody dared correct me. It's like, no, there's no showcase with this. This is an introductory class. What is this bad man talking about?
Well, I guess the other thing I love about that story, and I do think it connects to our theme about daring to be human, is there's a way that we as teachers, and I think also as humans, get an idea about in our heads about what we are capable of. And although on the one hand, you are clearly, you know, not aligning what you are offering to the needs of your student, there was another way in which, by not having expectations of what they were capable of as beginners, you allowed them to show up and stretch and perform in ways that they were capable of beyond what you might have expected of them. And
Absolutely
lovely.
true. Um, it really made me think about the nature of teaching in general. And anytime I think it's about my being a good teacher, I am limiting myself and my students. Whereas if I'm ready to accept that a lot of different things can happen and it's exploration, and I really don't know that much of what I'm doing, it's an open set. We can go someplace really cool.
Fantastic. Well, our next storyteller um, is someone who I will open my brain and dare to be human and say, I have 7,000 transition sentences in my head, which I could put in here. And I keep going like, ooh, that would be cool transition. Nope, that would be cool. Nope, that would be cool. Nope. And so I'm just going to say she is one of the most awesome human beings that I know. And I don't want to give away her story by previewing it too much. And I don't want to gush about her too much because that will make her feel shy. So let me just introduce you to Willow Burns, and we will talk to her after. Here's Willow Burns.
Hello. Okay, so it's the year 2000 and I'm in the 5th grade, and I'm sitting in class one day and my 5th grade teacher tells me and 2 other students that the principal of the school needs to see us in the hallway. Now, we're about a month away from graduating 5th grade, and up until this point, I have never gotten in trouble in school. And not only have I never gotten in trouble in school, but I sort of have two things that I'm terrified of at this age and at this point in my life. One of which is getting in trouble with the school principal, Mr. M, him in particular. Because I had an older brother, and when he was in elementary school, he used to get in trouble, and he warned me going into school that Mr. M could be a bit of a jerk sometimes. So I was very nervous about that. And my parents also, because my brother had struggled with him, they had sort of a fraught relationship with the principal. And so I thought that I was supposed to dislike him. So all through elementary school, I pretended that we were nemesis. And every time I would pass him in the hallway, I would, squint my eyes and cross my arms and give him a little scowl. And Mr. M would cross his arms and squint his eyes and give a scowl right back. But there was always a little hint of a smile underneath that scowl. And so he would start to smile, and then I would smile. And I assumed that we had this unspoken understanding that not only were we not actually nemesis, but we were actually pretty fond of each other. So I wasn't really sure about that, though, until one day when I was sitting in an assembly in school. I'm sitting cross-legged on the ground of this half gymnasium, half auditorium, and Mr. M is standing on stage, and he has a Yankee cap that he's pulling names out of to give out prizes to a few students. And he pulls out a slip of paper and he opens it up. And before he says anything, before he makes a sound, I knew in my gut that he was about to say my name. And then he did. Then I won a $5 gift certificate to Stewart's for ice cream. So I don't know if it was just a guess. I don't know if it was just a coincidence, but it felt like I knew he was going to say my name. I knew it like it was a fact. I was more sure of it than I was sure of anything else, because I recognized this little hint of a smile on his face. And it was the same little smile that I would see in the hallway when we would pretend to scowl and pretend to be nemesis. So I was really afraid of getting in trouble with him, not just because I was afraid of having the experience that my older brother had where he was getting in trouble at school, but I also wanted to be seen as a good student in Mr. M's eyes, and I wanted him to like me. So that was a big fear of mine. The only other thing that I think I was more afraid of at that point in my life was that other students might find out that my family was poor. So I saw the way that some of the other poor kids at my school were treated by other students, and sometimes even by the other teachers. And I knew that if that happened to me, that I wouldn't survive it. There's no way. So I made it my mission to just blend in as much as I possibly could and sort of go unnoticed in that respect. And my brother helped me with that too. He gave me some tips and some advice. Like this one time we went back to school shopping, and we went to the Salvation Army, and I found a pair of straight leg camo pants, and they fit me perfectly. And I loved them so much. I was going through like a little bit of a punk rock phase because my brother was going through like a punk rock phase. And so I was just so in love with them. I felt like such a badass. And I mean, if I still had them today and fit them, I would wear them every day. But my brother, on the way home from the Salvation Army, my brother told me, you might not want to tell the other kids at school where we were shopping today, if anyone asks where you got your pants, you might not want to tell them because they might make fun of you. So it might be better to just say they were given to you as a gift, or you don't remember the name of the store. And I was like, okay, got it. I'm going to blend in. And the camo will help me blend in even more. Zing. Okay, sorry. So I was terrified of it, right? I was terrified of sort of being exposed in that way. And I think really ultimately, like my fear of getting in trouble and my fear of people finding out that I was one of the poor kids really stemmed from the same thing. That like in my core, I just wanted to be a good student and I wanted people to like me. And I didn't think that I could be a good student if I was getting in trouble. And I didn't believe that people would like me if they found out that I was poor. So I'm in my 5th grade classroom and my teacher has just told me and 2 other students that the principal needs to see us in the hallway. And we're nervously walking into the hallway, racking our brains, trying to figure out like what we did wrong and why we needed to see the principal. And we get out into the hallway and I see that there's a few other kids already out there. So there's about 5 students in total and Mr. M is standing there, and Mr. M proceeds to tell us that we had been randomly selected and that they pulled names out of the hat and we won a free trip to see a Yankee game at Yankee Stadium, all expenses paid. And the other kids around me started to like light up with excitement. And my stomach dropped to the floor because I looked around at who I was standing next to in the hallway. And this was not a randomly selected, a randomly chosen group of kids. These were the poorest kids in my grade and me. And I felt my muscles tighten and started to feel shaky and my palms were sweating. And I knew that this didn't feel, I knew what it felt like to have my name randomly drawn from a hat and win a prize. And this didn't feel like that. So I said to Mr. M that I hated the Yankees and I would never go to a game at Yankee Stadium. And I stormed into the classroom and I sat down and I just kept thinking, you know what, my brother was right. Mr. M is a jerk. Like I had spent this whole time trying so hard to hide this truth about me, and it just almost exposed it to everyone. Like, I don't know who else heard. I don't know, like if he knows, I don't know who else knows. And I was furious. So about a month later, I'm at my 5th grade graduation and there's a slideshow and they're showing photos from throughout the school year of all the 5th graders. And a photo comes up and it is Mr. M and the kids at Yankee Stadium. And I look at the photo and I see all these kids smiling, and all I can think is that it looks like they're having so much fun. Then I regretted not going with them. I also totally forgot that they have hot dogs at ballparks, and I loved hot dogs, and I still do. And, you know, I was really feeling the weight of my decision in that moment. So I kept thinking about that photo, and I was really confused about it for a long time because I didn't understand how those kids could have had so much fun, and how was it that they looked happy even though this was so obviously like a setup and it was charity, and how did they not realize that? And because if they had realized it, they never would have accepted it either. They would have done the same thing that I did. So they obviously couldn't have known. So I felt confused about this for a really long time. And it was about 20 years later, after I had become a devout Red Sox fan, that it occurred to me that maybe they did know, and maybe they didn't care, and maybe they knew something else that I didn't know. And maybe Mr. M really wasn't that much of a jerk after all. Thank you.
Yay. Wow. What I wonder what do I want to ask you about this story, Willow? I guess I want to, I guess I wonder about this story for you, like in this moment right now. Like how do you hold this story for yourself right now in your life? If I don't know if it's even fair to ask you that, but that's what
I don't know exactly what that question means, but
yeah, and I don't, and you don't have to answer it either. It's just the question that's coming up for me now as I hear you tell this story. It's like, I feel like it's such a, I love this story so much. Um, and it's not fair. Like, this is not like, I don't have a contract with you to like interview you about your story. So you do not have to answer that question. But it's just, I guess for me, I'll say this. For me, one of the things that I know to be true about you is your gigantic heart and your compassion and your empathy and insight to just widely diverse groups of people and huge insight. I know you're a sociologist, and I feel like this story gives me insight into one of your paths into why that might be true. So I don't know if that's true or not. Thank you for your story.
thank you.
Any thoughts about what's not different for you, or what's not
Oh,
in your life right now?
yes. I mean, so I have it pretty easy because I already work from home. So this has been a pretty seamless transition on that front. So
Awesome.
feel guilty about that, but
Thank you for your story.
thank you.
Great. Next, I am delighted to have with us sort of one of the great sort of conveners of storytelling. And I think I had one of your compatriots who I called the fairy godmother of storytelling here in the capital region of New York. So maybe you're the godfather of storytelling here in the capital region. I don't know, Mike, but it's great to have you with us. You run the front Parlor series in Troy, New York, monthly, and we've been wanting to have you here with us at Dare to Be Human for a long time. So we bring you Mike DeSocio.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm standing in my grandparents' apartment, and the scene around me is chaos. They've just moved in from their home of 20 years. They've downsized to this tiny little space in a complex. And my mom is trying to like help them get unpacked. Meanwhile, she's kind of arguing on and off with my grandfather, who speaks this very hard to understand mix of Sicilian dialect and English. And I'm just kind of there as a visitor, more or less getting in people's way, watching it all unfold. She's sitting on the couch, and it's this pristine white, it's actually like a light gray couch. And my mom bought this as a housewarming gift for them. And my grandma's just sitting on the couch and she's coloring. Because my grandma has Alzheimer's, and this is one of the few ways that she can be calm, she can occupy herself. And so we gave her a coloring book, and she's sort of fastidiously coloring in the lines with her markers and colored pencils, and more or less minding her own business. That is until my mom rushes over and she grabs the coloring book directly out of my grandma's hands, because one of the markers has fallen on that gray couch and is turning one of the seat cushions a shade of dark blue. I think to myself, the first thought that crosses my mind is this is probably why all of those old ladies covered their couches in plastic, and that this couch probably should have been covered in plastic, but it wasn't. And my mom runs over and she grabs a towel and detergent, and she's trying to dab out the ink furiously and save this brand new piece of furniture that she definitely spent a lot of money on. And my grandma, through all this, is just kind of sitting on the edge of the couch, like visibly perturbed but confused. And you can tell that she doesn't really understand what's going on around her. She really didn't spend that much more time in that apartment. A couple of months later, it became clear that she needed to be in a nursing home. And so we found a spot for her and I'm back in New Jersey one weekend visiting, and I walk into the nursing home, and we go down this hallway, and on either side of the hallway along the walls, there are these facades painted around each door with like fake shingles and windows and flower boxes to make it look like each person has their little home. And we pass by each little mural, and we get to my grandmother's room where the shingles and the window haven't quite been finished yet, and the painter's still working on the details. And we find my grandmother, in her bed, and she seems pretty happy. The nursing home is a comfortable place for her. She is well taken care of by the aides, and we learn that she's become kind of a kleptomaniac in here. So she's got like a teddy bear that doesn't even belong to her, but she seems to think this is hilarious. And we get a tray, like a cafeteria tray for her meal for the day, and we start feeding it to her, and it's like objectively a bad meal. It's like soggy broccoli and like bland mashed potatoes and like some other goop that you don't even know what it is, like you might get in high school. And my mom is feeding her spoonfuls, and every bite is like the best bite of food she has ever taken. She's like, I love that. That's so good. Every time she takes a bite, and it's like her taste buds are turned up to 11. And she especially loves the apple juice. I think the sweets really do it for her. And it's really heartwarming to see her enjoying herself and smiling and laughing, and for all of us to be able to share this moment with her. And I think to myself, we finally have found a way to make my grandmother comfortable. And eventually we were wrapping up our visit, and everyone sort of filed out of the room, except me and my mom. I'm kind of lingering in the doorway, and my mom closes the blinds and tries to make it quiet and dark to put my grandmother down for a nap. And she pulls up the blankets, and my grandmother closes her eyes, and we just wait for her to fall asleep. But after a few minutes, it's becoming clear that even though her eyes are closed, she's not getting closer to sleep. She's like readjusting her blanket. She pulls it up and then puts it down and then pulls it up again. She tosses and she turns. And my mom's just watching her. And I think there's this tacit understanding between me and my mom of how difficult it is to just watch this, because everything that my mom is trying to do in that moment to make her comfortable just isn't working. And it's especially sad for me because I just think about the difficult life that my grandmother has had. She has spent decades battling depression and anxiety. She never had a lot of money. She worked into old age. And there were brief moments of joy in her life, like going to Disney World for the first time as an adult, and fostering many cats and animals. But when you look at the whole of her life, it wasn't easy, and it wasn't comfortable. And in that moment where she couldn't, even in this last stage of her life, just relax, was absolutely heartbreaking for me. A couple of months later, I'm back in New Jersey, and I'm getting out of my mom's car, and I open up the trunk and I pull out a wreath of flowers. And my mom kind of absentmindedly, she picks up an urn, my grandmother's urn, and she kind of tucks it under her arm, and we go back into the apartment complex. And we take the elevator to the 4th floor, and when we enter my grandfather's apartment, things are really still. My grandpa's in the kitchen, he says hello, we exchange a few words. And I go over to this cabinet in the living room, and I put down the flower wreath. And the cabinet's kind of plastered in pictures. It's got photos of the trip to Disney World, photos of the cats and dogs, photos from all stages of my grandmother's life, where she looks happy in a lot of them. And my mom follows behind me and places the urn in the middle of the flowers. And we all sit down at the kitchen table, and not much at all is said in that moment. But I look over to the urn, and I realize that things have finally changed, that in this way that I never expected, my grandma is comfortable now in death, and that she's there surrounded by memories and surrounded by love, and she'll never be far from my grandfather. And that's when I realized that it finally happened, that we finally figured out a way to allow my grandmother to rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So as I said, you, Mike, are the sort of king of storytelling here in the Capital Region. What do you think is so amazing about it? I was waxing rhapsodic about the storytelling and storytelling community. What?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's really cool is Every show that we have is just like huge range of experience, which I love. Like we'll get some storytellers like myself who are very experienced and like really have come with like, you know, a crafted story to tell, which is awesome. And they really kind of show off their skills. And then we have people who walk in and they've like never even heard of it. And they tell these incredibly moving stories, or they just had something they really needed to get off their chest. And they like bring us all to tears. I mean, this happens almost every month. And I think the reason that it happens is because storytelling is an art form that doesn't really have a lot of like artifice, I guess. So like anyone can do it, right? Like we all tell stories in our lives in different ways. And some of us think about the strategy a little bit more than others, but ultimately, like you don't need training to do this. And I think that's what's really cool is that, you know, anyone can connect with an audience in this way. And that's one of the things that I love from our events.
I love that. You know, the whole point, what's so beautiful, I think about this particular art form is that it's about being true, right? It's about being authentic and connecting as real humans. So if the technique or the structure or the art of doing it is in service of that and helps us communicate something and reach each other better and align with our intention as storytellers more, then that's great. But if it starts to become a barrier to sharing our own authenticity or really reaching other people, then we're sort of undermining the magic of what we're doing, right? Or if it keeps people away. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I love that story. And I love that way of holding, you know, what obviously is also a hard moment for you, I'm sure. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Our last storyteller, those of you who've been seeing our Facebook posts will know that my favorite way to introduce Laurel is to tell you all that she is my mother's absolute favorite Capital Region citizen. My mother lives in California, but she has come to visit me, and having come to visit me, every time I now speak to her on the phone, she asks about this wonderful lady. It is my great delighted privilege to have her with us as a storyteller. Please welcome Laurel McAdoo.
Thank you. So my Dare to Be Human story takes place in 2007. I am 41 years old. I am in my office talking to someone who I share cubicle space with, and her name is Bobby. And through the years, we've been great friends. I have 5-year-old twin boys. She has a grandson who's 5 years old, and she comes and approaches me and she needs a favor. She tells me that her sister runs a triathlon group in Seattle called the Soul Sisters, and she would like to join her sister and train for a sprint level triathlon. However, we live here in the Northeast and she needs a training partner. Not only does she need a training partner, she invited me to do this triathlon in Seattle with her. So as a single mother of 5-year-old twins, one of which had just completed chemo for a pediatric cancer that he had, there was no way that I knew I was going to Seattle, but there was also no way that I could not show up for my friend in this manner. One thing for certain is back then and even now, no one would ever look at me and say, there goes an athlete, and no one was ever looking at her and saying, there goes an athlete. But somehow we embark on this journey together to train for a triathlon. As luck would have it, the town of Bethlehem that I live in had a triathlon club, and they met at the Y. The town that I live is basically your Norman Rockwell suburban Anytown USA town. So Bobby and I sign up to be a part of the Tri Club to start training for this swim, bike, and run. Now, initially my thought was, I grew up swimming. I had a pool in my yard. I can swim. I love to bike. I can bike. The run, that's probably going to give me some trouble because I've never ran, but I always wanted to know what that runner's high really felt like. I've heard about it. I'm like, we can do this. So Bobby and I set out to our triathlon training. It is 3 times a week from 7 to 9 at night. After a long day at work, we would show up, and every night was dedicated to a different thing, the swim, the bike, or the run. We trained on the inside during the winter, and as spring came, we started to train outside with our bike and our run. It was hard. It was hard. I remember being in the pool and swimming for fun and training to swim for an event is very different. I remember hearing the chant from our coach, you know, elbows high, brush your thigh and place it in the water. Elbows high, brush your thigh, place your hand in the water. And everyone else was effortless, and you'd see as their mouth would turn and they would get that little bit of air. And somehow I was more like glub, 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 glub. And I would get to the end of the pool and my chest would be heaving and I'd try to catch my breath and I would make my way back to the end of the pool and I'd look over and I'd see Bobby, and Bobby wasn't doing much better than I, but we would always go, we would show up and we would try. We put the try in triathlon. The run, that wasn't any better. We'd be out running, and it very soon became apparent that they had to separate us from the pack because we were training with women that were in their 20s, 30s, men that were athletes. Suburban USA, these moms were stay-at-home moms who looked forward to training at night all day long. They couldn't wait to put on their outfits and their shoes and show up for training. And Bobby and I would show up for training tired. We were tired and hungry and had nothing left to give at the end of the day, but we would show up for training. And our run training kind of went like, you know, can you make it to that light post? Yeah. So we'd run to the light post and then we would walk for a while. And then they would have us run to the next light post and we would walk for a while. And then our open water swim similarly was just problematic. We did our best thing on our bike. The bike was always good. We weren't particularly fast, but we didn't really have any problems with the bike. So fast forward to try day. If nothing else, I looked the part. I had my tri suit. I had my sneakers. I spent a lot of money on a fancy new bike. I had my number tattooed on my arm. I was number 311. We were taking pictures, all excited. I go to see what heat I'm in. I'm in the first heat, the 40 to 45 age bracket for women. So I remember they called all the women to start the swim, and I put my feet in the water, and the water was cold and yucky. The water was just, I don't even know how to explain it other than no one should be swimming in there. I'm not sure why we were, but here we are. My heart is beating, beating, beating. I can hear it in my chest. And I look to the right and I see a bush and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I could probably crawl out and get behind this bush right now and nobody would even know. While I'm planning my escape, the start gun goes off and everybody jumps into the water. So I jump in the water and I'm swimming and there's water splashing and there's feet and people, and I'm swimming and I'm swimming and I'm swimming and I'm really thinking I'm doing something, and I look up and I see the first rescue person, and I finally reach the first rescue person, and they're on a canoe. They're in a kayak. And I stop and I'm breathing because I got caught up in the excitement of everybody else that was a triathlete, and then there's me. And I'm trying to catch my breath and they're like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes." I was like, "Yes, I'm okay. I just need to catch my breath." And I'm watching all the other people make it through the course. And I decide to tell the first rescue person, I said, "You know, I've got this friend that I'm training with and she's older than I am. And if you can believe it, she's worse than I am. And she's coming up in a heap behind me. So she's probably going to stop and rest just like me. So be nice to her and welcome her and keep an eye out for her. Her name is Bobby. So they're like, okay. And they said, do you think you can swim some more? I'm like, yeah, I can swim some more. And they yell ahead to the next rescue person. And they said, she's going to try to swim some more. And they said, can you make it to the next one? I said, yeah, I can make it. So I start to swim. And then I hear from the banks cheers. Ah! Everybody's going wild and they're cheering for me. And I'm like, oh no, I'm that person that they're actually saying like, oh my God, can she make it? So I get to the second rescue person. They're on a surfboard and I'm gasping and feeling kind of good, but I haven't noticed that people have just been swimming past me. I have no idea how long it took me to get across this body of water, but I tell the story to the second person about my friend Bobby, who's coming up behind me. And she got me involved in this, and I'm only doing this for her. And she's worse than I am, but look for her. She's coming. So the whole scenario repeats itself. They call ahead, check with me, I can do it. I swim to the third rescue person. I rest. I tell them about my dear friend Bobby. And they say, your next stop is the end. And they point out into the distance. Can you make it? And it looks a little longer. And I'm like, yeah, I can make it. But like, how soon can I like stand up? I was really concerned with when I could actually get my feet on some ground. And, you know, they said, it's not too far. You can swim in and you'll be able to stand up and walk out. So I'm like, okay. Well, I said, I'm gonna go, and don't forget my friend Bobby. She's coming behind. Tell her hello. I take a deep breath and I swim and I swim and I swim and I swim, and I would stop and try to touch the ground. Nope. Swim, stop, try to touch the ground. Nope. Swim, stop. I touch the ground. I made it. I start getting myself up and out of the water, and I climb the embankment and I look, and I have my goggles on and I take them off and I look, and I'm thinking, is this a mirage? Am I delirious? It can't be. What I'm seeing can't be what I'm seeing. And in front of me is my friend Bobby, dry as a bone, clapping, going, yay, Laurel, you did it. You did it. And I'm like, how are you in front of me? I've been telling everybody about you, that you were coming, that you were worse than me. How are you standing in front of me? And Bobby says, girl, I got in that water and somebody kicked water in my face, and I was like, this ain't for me. And I got out that water. So I was really mad at Bobby and wanted to kill her, but I was really tired. And needless to say, we finished the bike together. We finished the run together. And I am a triathlete. I have the tattoo to prove it. And I have a great story to tell about training to be a triathlete. Thank you.
Oh no. And you're still friends with Bobby.
I am still friends with Bobby. Bobby announced her retirement today. People in the office are like, oh God, if we have to hear this story one more time, but it's a great story.
Oh my goodness. My mother has very good taste. She has a very good taste in people, and she knows how to pick like the good, loyal, stick by you types. So you've proven your friendship.
I have.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So I didn't ask Mike. I'm going to come back to you, Mike. But oh no, we didn't lose her, did we?
I hope not.
But So tell me what's not sucking for you? What's not different for you in these strange times we're in?
I would say what's not different is my lens of gratitude. I think it's got me to this point in my life. It's got me through some really hard times. I'm able to look around me and see the parts of my journey that I'm really grateful to have, and empathy for the people that are struggling during this time. The parts that don't suck so much is I've got a senior who should be graduating, and he will be graduating. The whole ceremonial party, um, that part, I'm not going to lie, that part sucks, but we've been home. I've been teaching him how to cook, and uh, we've been playing games, and I'm doing things with him that I am 100% certain if we were not under quarantine, we would not be getting a chance to spend this time together. So,
Stuck with mom, and so you get a little bit of extra for him before he goes away. That's lovely.
yeah,
That's lovely. He's great too.
he is.
Um, all right, Mike, I'm coming back to you because I didn't ask you what's not sucking, what's not different.
Yeah. I think what's not different, I was thinking today, like nature like isn't aware that like coronavirus is happening really. And so like in my backyard, like the birds are chirping and I'm chasing a groundhog out of the hole under my patio, just like last year. And I'm growing vegetables and like all of like the natural world around me is just keeping on in ways that are delightful but also annoying. So that's still there. And one thing that doesn't suck is I don't really like drive at all anymore, which is great, except for my once every 2 weeks to the grocery store. And it's nice to like, instead of like zipping around outside of my home all the time, now it's like I walk around my neighborhood a lot and I'm getting really acquainted with Troy and just like, like getting to know all these nuances that I didn't before, which I think is really nice too.
That's lovely. Yeah, I think around here, if anything, if nature's noticing anything, it's that we're not in the way so much in the.
Right.
We had a turkey in our driveway a few weeks ago.
Wow.
Well, I am delighted always, whether it's in person or like this, that you all are willing to share your stories. And anytime a human is willing to share their stories, I think it makes the world a richer place. And so we are always open for hearing people's stories. If you out there want to come and share stories, we will be doing this again. So let us know. You can be in touch with us at hello@daretobehumanpodcast.com or at hey@mopco.com or
Org.
don't go to mopco.com. Well, our old joke was don't go to mopco.com unless you want cleaning supplies, but everybody wants cleaning supplies right now. And
Yeah,
I don't think you can get those there. It's just some weird Chinese, like,
it's an Egyptian fertilizer company.
it's an fertilizer company.
It really is a MOPCO. In Egypt, they sell nitrogen.
Yes,
So
just
it won't
don't
help
go
you.
there. It's mopco.org. hey@mopco.org. hey@coppet.com. hello@Dare to Be Human podcast. Be in touch. We will be doing this again. We want to hear your stories. Come be a storyteller. If you're in the, you don't even have to be in the capital region anymore, Mike, right? You can go to Parlor. That if you just want to show up and not plan anything you have themes for monthly podcasts, storytelling, open mic theme things. And we're doing all sorts of stuff all the time. We have improv shows every Friday and Saturday night right here at live.mopco.org.
Wait, you mean there's one tomorrow night?
There is one tomorrow night at 8:00.
Right here?
There is. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm doing an improv epistolary novel improv show with my friends in California, doing a playwriting thing. Go to mopco.org. like us on all sorts of stuff. Just be listening out there. People are doing amazing things. One of the things that does not suck right now is time and space has no meaning. So you can get in your little transporter and play with anyone, anywhere in the world, anytime. So be in touch, share your stories, dare to be human. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for sharing yourselves with us. We are forever grateful. Have a lovely night or morning or whatever time it is.